Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Africa Update here on Trust Television, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. Yeah, it's still Africa Update on Trust Television, and I'm your host, Chiamaka Mwafo. We're going to start with Cameroon. Now, earlier in the week, we heard about the president being ill, or rather reportedly dead. Now, the country has outlawed any discussion about the health of the 91-year-old President Paul Biya. A letter shared by the Interior Ministry said after Biya's prolonged absence fueled widespread speculation he was unwell. Earlier this week, the authorities put out statements saying the president was on a private visit to Geneva and in good health, dismissing reports he had fallen ill as pure fantasy. In the letter to regional governors dated October 9, Interior Minister Paul Atanga Nji said discussing the president's health was a matter of national security. He ordered the governors to set up units to monitor broadcasts on private media channels as well as social networks. The cocoa and oil producing Cameroon, which has had just two presidents since independence from France and Britain in the early 1960s, is likely to face a messy succession crisis if Biya became too ill to remain in office or died. Now, Egypt has denied involvement in Sudan's ongoing war, focusing instead on efforts to end the conflict and protect civilians, according to a statement by its foreign ministry. The denial follows accusations from Rapid Support Forces RSF leader Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo. Here's more from Africa News.
In a statement by the Foreign Affairs Ministry, Cairo denied taking sides in Sudan's war, saying its sole focus was on ending the conflict and protecting civilians. In a video message on Wednesday, the head of Rapid Support Forces said his fighters had come under fire from Egyptian warplanes and drones in the Jabal Moya mountain range, which connects the states of Sennar, Al Jazeera and White Nile. Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, alias Hemeti, claimed that Sukhoi 29 fighter jets belonging to Egypt had bombarded RSF positions in Jabal Moya for hours on October 5, allowing the Sudanese army to retake the area. Hemeti himself stands accused of receiving Emirati weapons. Sudan's army went on the offensive in mid-September, retaking significant ground from the RSF.
Still staying with Sudan, the Sudanese Armed Forces shows VOA weapons that they say were supplied to the paramilitary RSF by the United Arab Emirates, which would be in violation of the UN arms embargo. Henry Wilkins reports for the VOA.
The Sudanese Armed Forces say this crate once contained bombs used against them by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, the opposing side of Sudan's civil war. It's stamped with the address of the logistics arm of the United Arab Emirates military. Sudan is under a UN arms embargo, but analysts and rights groups say these imported weapons are making the conflict worse.
If the UAE were to suspend all support to the RSF and were to tell its partners in the region not to support the RSF, I think that this war could be over very soon, quite frankly.
The SAF also showed VOA rocket tubes and burnt-out vehicles they said could only have been supplied by Abu Dhabi. The UAE's foreign ministry tells VOA it is not providing any support or supplies to the Rapid Support Forces or to any of the warring parties in Sudan. But a UN report says there is credible evidence to the contrary. Hudson says the UAE is attempting to gain geopolitical influence in Sudan and the surrounding region.
The UAE has had this competition with the Saudis in the Horn of Africa for many years. It seems to be doubling down on its investment, not just in Sudan, but in Chad and Ethiopia, in Kenya. So I think the UAE wants to be the kind of great power in the Horn of Africa.
Iran has also violated the same arms embargo by providing drones to the SAF, according to the Dutch non-profit PAX. The Sudanese ruling council has denied this, according to media reports. VOA asked Sudanese Finance Minister Jibril Ibrahim if the SAF had been receiving support from Iran.
This is the official institution of the country. They can buy arms from anywhere.
The Iranian Foreign Ministry did not respond to a request for comment. While nations vie for influence in Sudan, civilians are bearing the brunt of the conflict. UN figures show 11 million people displaced and 25 million needing humanitarian assistance. Mariam Mohamed Farah Naim was injured by RSF shelling in early September.
I knew right away that my legs were broken because when they told me to move before the second bombardment, I couldn't. My daughter was hurt as well. She was screaming, screaming and screaming.
A year and a half in, the world's largest displacement crisis shows no signs of letting up.
Now, show his support and rather to show his gratitude, the Haitian Prime Minister Gary Conille, in his visit to Kenya on Thursday and has met with President William Ruto on Friday, expresses gratitude to the President and the people of Kenya for their help in the fight against gang violence in his country, Haiti.
Haiti is a country of 12 million people hostage to a handful of gang members, with half a population food insecure, with 600,000 displaced, with 70% of the health infrastructure that had collapsed. And this crisis came at a time when the world has its share of crisis. And you helped us tell the world that Haitian children are not less deserving than the others, and that Haitian men and women who are suffering deserve solidarity, and you led that fight with us. And today I think we're in a better place. You helped where others saw crisis, you saw opportunity and potential, and you voiced it in a very firm way, allowing for others to come together around Haiti. And me and the Haitian people are extremely grateful to you for your leadership in this critical time. I also want to, of course, extend and convey the gratitude of the Haitian people to the Kenyan people for their commitment, engagement, and sacrifice. Today, you share with us not because you have extreme abundance, but because Kenyan people have made the determination that Haiti deserves their help and support, and they've stepped up in a very significant way. Let me also reiterate what you've said. The first deployments of Kenyan contingents in Haiti have been extremely helpful, useful, professional, committed. They've engaged almost immediately, side by side with the police force. They've provided us with the wealth of experience that they have, and they continue to engage with us in a significant manner. Early on in this process, you will recall that their doubters had thought that language would be a barrier. Let me confirm that it has not. I've followed directly operations in some of the most difficult circumstances, and they found ways to make sure that they protect each other and they get the mission accomplished.
And from Kenya, we go to Mozambique, where vote counting has started in the country on Wednesday evening as an election that is widely expected to deliver another victory for the ruling Frelimo party, which has been in power since the country's independence from Portugal in 1975. 4 candidates are vying for the Mozambique's presidency. Some have pledged to rid the country of alleged widespread corruption and improve its economy, while others say they will end the long-running insurgency in the northern province of Cabo Delgado that has driven out about 1 million since 2017. VOA Nairobi Bureau Chief Mariama Diallo reports from Maputo, where some Mozambicans say they are more interested in a better life than who wins the elections this week.
The same Frelimo party has ruled Mozambique in southern Africa since its 1975 independence from Portugal. Some say the country is doing just fine, including 69-year-old Argentina Bebe, who told VOA she's too old for change and wants continuity in presidential and legislative elections slated for Wednesday.
I'm not interested in change. I already know the people, but I prefer to continue the improvement of Mozambique.
Others, like 28-year-old Ernesto Cremildo Castigo, who works at a butcher shop, says he'll vote for change.
Mainly due to corruption, so that Mozambique can develop, so that society can feel more at ease, in terms of justice, in terms of education, in terms of public transportation.
Aslak Ora, researcher at the Christian Michelsen Institute in Norway, has been doing research on Mozambique for 25 years. He says corruption does affect the daily lives of ordinary people.
You have the everyday corruption where people meet civil services and they have to, pay little bribes in order to get their the services out of the state or municipal institutions that they relate to, and that complicates things a bit.
4 candidates are vying for the presidency, including Daniel Chapo, the choice for the ruling Frelimo party. At a recent rally, the 47-year-old former radio presenter told supporters that peace and security for his country will be a top priority.
Because without peace, without security, there is no development. As I said here, we have our brothers who are suffering from terrorist attacks in Cabo Delgado.
The government has been battling an insurgency in the gas and oil-rich Cabo Delgado province, where about 4,000 people have reportedly been killed and about 1 million displaced since 2017, affecting multi-billion-dollar oil and gas projects. Meanwhile, analysts say that one of Frelimo's biggest accomplishments has been ending years of its brutal war with the Mozambican National Resistance Movement, or RENAMO. RENAMO has since become one of the main opposition parties that came in second in the last presidential election. After the death of longtime leader Afonso Dhlakama in 2018, its newest leader, Osufo Mamad, accuses the Frelimo party of having no proposals to solve ordinary people's problems.
Vote for you have to have jobs tomorrow so we have good access roads. Did you hear me right? Your land is a rich area. You are poor. It's through Frelimo's poor governance.
The other 2 candidates include Lutero Simango, a 64-year-old and leader of the Mozambique Democratic Movement, and 50-year-old Venancio Mondlane, an independent who used to belong to the RENAMO party and seems popular among the youth. The National Electoral Commission met with international observers Friday to explain the voting system and answer their questions. The Commission chairperson Carlos Simao Matsine said that all voting materials should be in place by Monday, and voting is expected to take place across the country, including in Cabo Delgado.
Now, the issue of migration, the head of the UN International Organization for Migration, or IM, is calling for safe migration to and from the Gulf countries as the dangerous Eastern Horn of Africa route claims more lives. The so-called Eastern route runs from the Horn of Africa to Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf by way of Ethiopia, Djibouti, Somalia, and Yemen. Migrant workers, mainly from Ethiopia but also from East African countries, travel over the route in search of jobs and economic opportunities. At least 48 people died, and 75 others were missing or presumed dead after smugglers forced migrants up 2 boats on October 1 in the Red Sea off the coast of Djibouti. Almost all of the migrants were Ethiopians. Speaking to VOA during the IMF's regional review of the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration held Wednesday in Ethiopia, Director General Amy Pope said more people were being harmed on the eastern route than on any other migration route in the world, though it does not get a lot of attention. When we come back from the break, we look at health-related matters, the environment, and more. Do stay with us here on Africa Update. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're still on to Africa Update on Trust TV. Now to health matters. Over in Rwanda, an outbreak in the country of the Ebola-like Marburg fever is under control, and travel bans targeting the East African country are necessary, according to the head of Africa's top public health agency on Thursday. Rwanda declared the outbreak on September 27 and has so far reported that 13 people have died. Here's more from Africa News.
The head of Africa's leading public health agency announced on Thursday that the Ebola-like Marburg fever outbreak in Rwanda is under control, making travel bans to the East African nation unnecessary. Rwanda reported the outbreak on September 27th with 13 fatalities so far. Recently, Rwanda received 700 doses of a trial vaccine from the US-based Sabin Vaccine Institute intended for health workers, emergency responders, and those who have been in contact with confirmed cases. Over 200 individuals have been vaccinated since the trial vaccine arrived. Rwandans are being asked to avoid physical interactions to help control the outbreak.
And from there we move to Ghana, where the country is introducing new measures to combat illegal mining. The presidency said Wednesday amid mounting public pressure on the government to address the issue in recent weeks. President Nana Akufo-Addo announced the deployment of additional military personnel as well as naval boats on polluted river bodies to ensure the immediate cessation of all mining activities, legal or illegal, in and around these water bodies. Here's more.
This was supposed to be a strike by all workers in Ghana. The country's trade union congress called it off at the last minute on Wednesday night after the government assured that it was bringing in the military to help rid the country's water bodies of illegal gold miners. This follows weeks of protests in Accra for the menace to be banned entirely. The University Teachers Association of Ghana has over 200,000 members from all public universities in the country. This means that work in the tertiary levels of the country would now ground to a halt.
We were hoping that organized labor would be the voice of the voiceless and to defend the conscience of the society. But leadership of organized labor have sold their conscience, and therefore we realize that we simply cannot be on the same path. And that is why we have to go on the path on which we are right now, because we can't support the inept decision of leadership of organized labor.
A third of the country's forest reserves have now been affected by illegal gold mining, with over 4,000 hectares of forested land now degraded.
As the intelligentsia of society, we teach and we do research. We know exactly what the consequences are for being on the path on which we are threading right now. And so we are just speaking for the voiceless and the vulnerable who wish government could listen to them and do something, but government is completely adamant. And so we know we have the support of the whole country behind us.
As Ghana heads to the polls in December, illegal gold mining has become a big campaign issue ahead of the vote.
Over in French-speaking Ivory Coast, it is an environmental tragedy with ongoing consequences in Ivory Coast. Back in 2006, the company Trafigura wanted to get rid of 500 cubic meters of toxic waste from the refining of petroleum products stored on its cargo ship Probo Koala. After 3 countries refused the ship, it finally unloaded its cargo in Ivory Coast after 4 months at sea. With the approval of the authorities, a local company took charge of dumping the toxic waste around Abidjan, impacting at least 100,000 residents and causing several deaths. 18 years on, many are still fighting for justice. France 24's Julia Guggenheim, Damien Kofi, Flora Monteau, and Tom Kennedy report with Lauren Bain.
In this suburb of Abidjan, residents are still plagued by a public health crisis nearly 2 decades later.
This is where they dumped the toxic waste, in the trough there. They even dumped it close to people's homes. They even poured it into the neighborhoods.
In 2006, a cargo ship called the Probo Koala arrived in the Ivory Coast, carrying 500 cubic meters of toxic waste. The ship, chartered by Trafigura, was refused by several countries and spent 4 months at sea until finally docking in Abidjan. Its refuse was dumped at around 18 sites in the city.
You could smell the odors, and you could see that you were starting to get nosebleeds, vomiting. I felt pain in my ribcage, with breathing problems. To this day, I've got a cold that never goes away. I have a cold all the time. I always feel ill.
The courts determined that 17 deaths were directly linked to the toxic fumes, and around 100,000 people were poisoned. The director of the Ivorian company responsible for the waste dumping was sentenced to 20 years in prison. But in the end, no one was prosecuted from Trafigura, which settled a financial agreement with the state. A $200 million fund was set up to compensate victims, but many still have not received anything.
The state only paid for those who went to public hospitals. When you went to the public hospital, you lined up and they gave you paracetamol. Given my situation, I decided to go to a private clinic to get proper care. So far, I've had to pay 2.5 million francs. But I've never received anything from the States or from Trafigura.
In September 2023, the African court issued a ruling calling on the state to make a list of the victims and compensate them. But that's yet to happen, so human rights associations are speaking out.
Our first action was to notify the Côte d'Ivoire government of the decision, so they have been informed. The next step for us is to remobilize all the victims so that together we can make the case.
The Ministry of Justice did not respond to our requests for interviews. Meanwhile, the number of civil lawsuits has increased. One case brought before a British court should have enabled Mr. and Mrs. Yapo, along with 30,000 other victims, to each receive around 1,500 euros in compensation for their medical expenses.
My whole body hurts. I can't even lie on my back. I can't do anything with my arms. I used to run a business, but since this happened, I can't do anything.
But some of these funds have been misused. Charles Kofi, president of an association representing the victims, led around 20 of them to Abidjan for another court proceeding. Judges examined the involvement of Société Générale, the bank managing the account Trafigura used to compensate victims.
Société Générale misled investigators by saying that they had already compensated 23,000 victims. We said that since Société Générale compensated 23,000 victims, it should give us the victims' documents, and we'll see. They never responded.
A few weeks later, the case was dismissed. But Kofi plans to appeal and tries to reassure the victims.
You're warriors, so keep your spirits up. We've been fighting this battle for 18 years, but I think the truth will triumph in the end. The case was heard today. It says that Société Générale didn't forge a private document, but that doesn't mean they didn't embezzle the money.
But some good news for the civil organizations finally arrived. Claude Gohuru, a former president of a victims association, was convicted of embezzling funds.
Here's the decision. This is very good news for the case. The criminal case is closed. There are no longer any legal obstacles to their being ordered to pay back the 4,658 million in civil damages.
Gohuru spoke to us just before the court ruling against him. He pointed the finger at the president of the National Assembly, Adama Bictogo, then Minister for African Integration. A report by the Economic Police in 2012 implicated this close ally of the government, and although he was never convicted, he resigned from his post.
Let Adama Bictogo accept responsibility. Let them put those funds back in place. I think that today there are people who think that justice can only protect them until a certain moment, just for a while.
Adama Bictogo declined to comment. As time goes on, the prospect of one day receiving compensation is becoming increasingly remote for victims.
Still circling around the issue of waste, over in Kenya, the national airline is producing diesel fuel made from plastic waste. Authorities say the goal is to provide cheaper fuel and to reduce plastic waste pollution. Victoria Amunga reports from Nairobi.
Uncontrolled disposal of plastics in Kenya often increases pollution and waste in the environment. Most of this plastic ends up in landfills. However, this month, National Airline Kenya Airways launched a project to turn plastics to fuel. The plastics are shredded and loaded into this hopper. Heat breaks the plastics down into oil, which is refined into diesel fuel for ground vehicles. The company's chief operating officer, George Kamal, says at least 1,000 liters of fuel is produced daily.
We get people to work here in the plant, and we get people to work in the community to collect that plastic from the community and pays money as well for the community. So we take that waste plastic from the community around, and we use that. So 98% comes from the community around us. 2% comes from the airline.
Scientists say the diesel produced from plastic waste is less efficient than regular fuel, produces higher exhaust emissions, and has lower flash point, meaning it catches on fire more easily. At the same time, oil supplies and prices are chronically uncertain, and Kenya barely produces any crude oil. So experts say creating fuel alternatives is crucial.
You begin to change people to renewable energy, and then also cut the dependency on fuel, on the traditional hydrocarbon fuels. And the earlier you do it, the better it will be for the country.
Also, plastic pollution remains a significant problem in Kenya, despite recent national commitments to increase recycling. An estimated 92% of Kenya's plastic is mismanaged and only 7% is recycled, according to a recent report.
We do use the plastics that is in terms of bottles and other like trays and such like things. So when they break, we would be forced to dispose them. But now with the plant, we are able to bring them back here and recycle the same to produce diesel.
The diesel production plant was designed by Kenyan engineers and is the first of its kind in the country. Kenya Airways officials say producing fuel locally is saving costs and reducing plastic waste.
Wow, you can see that there's nothing actually that is called waste. You can always make something out of anything. And you can see Kenya has done their bit to see that nothing goes to waste. And that's much we have for you on Africa Update this week. I hope you've learned something. I hope you've been informed as well. Till see you same time, same place next week. Don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms and our YouTube live stream for more news, programs, and documentaries. I am Chiamaka Mwafo. Bye for now.